See, Mario's all dressed up.
Sure,
He's definitely
Chief.
ready. Huh?
Yeah.
Good evening, gentlemen
Evening.
and ladies.
Oh, we're supposed to use our new background, aren't we?
All right. Fortunately, my computer doesn't support it. So,
Not sure mine does
Well, that's
either.
a good one, Hunter. I'm going to use
Yeah.
that one. My computer does not support that.
We get yelled at by a certain marketing director if we don't use it.
I'm using my daughter's old laptop and I don't think it supports it. Okay, let's see. I got 602. I think we're all here. We're just missing Commissioner Vice Chair Buzel, but why don't we go ahead and get started? Hopefully he'll call in. So thank you all for calling in. I'd like to welcome you to the special session of the Public Safety Commission. Purpose tonight is basically just to go over the three areas in the budget that pertain to public safety. And tonight we have with us the Finance Director Chung. I'd like to call the meeting to order and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh,
Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the
The
state
United
United States of America,
to the republic
to the
Republic
republic
for which it
that
stands,
stands, one
One
nation,
under
under
God,
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 with liberty,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a roll call, please? Jennifer,
Chair Hunter Chang,
here?
Vice Chair Jeff Buzel, he is excused. Commission Member Eugene Ramirez,
I'm here.
Commission Member Al Bogue,
Here,
Commission Member Victoria Firestone,
Present.
Alternate Zilla Tobiano,
Here.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the agenda's been posted 24 hours prior to this meeting. Written communications has been distributed. At this time, is there anyone from the public that would like to address anything that's not related to the budget?
we have no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's just go into it. We have one item on the agenda, and that's to go over the public safety related items. Director Chung, are you going to be presenting it?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone have any opening remarks before we dive into it? Okay, I guess we'll go through the package, and if we have any questions, we will ask them as we go along. We'll just ask them as they come up. Okay, all right. Please, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair Chang and members of the commission. It's unfortunate that I can't meet you in person, and I can only meet you virtually, but hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to meet everyone in person. I've been the finance director here now for a little over 1.5 years. And during that time, I've been through 2 budget cycles now. I've also helped implement an OPEB trust fund, and also living through a once in a lifetime pandemic. So it's been quite a year, and probably for many of us here on tonight. With the budget packet that was submitted to the commission, it was really broken down into 4 sections. There was the budget memo, which gave a really big summary of the various, how the department's going to end the year, but also looking out into next year, regards to all the budget increases or decreases. Also, the second section was the department narratives, regards to our mission, vision, our goals for this year, but also next year, and then some additional metrics for data. And then the third section was the organizational chart. And then the last section was where all the numbers are for the budget, which we call tie-out sheets, but it's the budget line items. So that was in your packet. And after my presentation, if you have questions anywhere in that packet, I and also the chiefs and Director Throne are available to answer any questions. I do have a simple but yet quick presentation just to share with the group. So let me bring out the PowerPoint slide that I have for you tonight. Everybody see the PowerPoint?
yes.
Great.
Yep.
So let me begin. So this is for the fiscal year 21-22. As you know, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. and we'll be covering the 3 departments. Just a quick overview on the financial status of the city. We continue to remain fiscally strong as our revenues remain intact and robust. And also on our expenditure side, we do have the expenditures are under control. As you're aware that our main driver in the general fund revenues is our property tax, which includes the public safety parcel tax. And that's really up to 70% of our general fund. And in that case, we've been very fortunate with this pandemic, as you probably heard of local agencies hurting, not only local, but just globally in general, regards to any agencies that's focused on tourism and various other revenue sources that have dwindled. But yet during this pandemic, being that property tax has been our strongest revenue source. And as a property owner, you've probably seen that as your property value has increased over the year. The public safety parcel tax covers about 25% of the overall public safety's budget. And just to touch on COVID-19, the city has received $185,000 so far from the CARES Act. And also we are anticipating an additional $2.4 million from the American Rescue Act that was signed about a month and a half ago by President Biden. So let me just jump into the first department, the police department. The police department's budget for next year is at $8.1 million. And the way the city breaks up the budget is into 2 categories, personnel and then service and supplies. So on the personnel side, police is budgeted for $7 million, and that comprises of 40 FTEs or full-time equivalents positions in the department. And then on the service and supply side, which includes contractual services, various supplies and materials for the department to operate. That's where the service and supplies budget resides, and that's $1.1 million. And just to highlight a few points for next year for police department, the reason for the budget increase is for the flock safety cameras, the program that was implemented, I believe, this fiscal year and has been very successful. Those are the license plate readers, and Chief is proposing 8 more cameras to be installed for the city. And additionally, the department is also asking for some software for records management, for more of paperless and also efficiency improvements throughout the department. And lastly, the big increase in budget was the equipment cost allocation. And in a fancy terms, in accounting terms, that's depreciation. So the department purchased 6 vehicles this year, 6 new patrol vehicles, also 2 motorcycles, and those have to be depreciated for the life of the vehicles. And so we need to budget for that, but that's not really a dollar cost to the bottom line for the city. It's just really an accounting entry to the budget.
Paul, do you want questions as you go?
Yes, you just feel free.
Yeah.
If I'm going too fast or if you have a question, please jump in. And
What's the estimated useful life of the vehicles? What life are you using, mileage or time?
It's time driven. I believe it's 10 years. Different vehicles are different, but I believe it's 10 years for the vehicles. Michael, by any chance, would you know?
Yes, we're currently planning 5 years or the equivalent number of mileage hours. The issue that we have with police cruisers is that they sit and idle. And so pretty much for every hour that they idle, it's equivalent to 33 miles. So we measure both miles and hours. And from that, when we get to somewhere around 50 or 60,000 miles, we balance that with whatever residual value that there is on the piece of equipment. Our real plan is to ultimately be on a 5-year schedule for replacement of these vehicles, because after about 5 years, they lose so much value and then they start to become a liability like we had with our prior vehicles, that they were breaking down all the time.
So Michael, aren't we using then equivalent of 5-year life?
It's an equivalent 5-year life, so it's
Okay,
a function
good.
of miles
Not 10.
and hours. Not 10.
Yeah,
that is,
yeah.
you know, the recommendation from the fleet assessment that we had about a year or so ago that
I
was
thought,
presented
yeah.
to the council,
Yeah.
And just the economics of it, it's 5 years is when we start planning on replacement for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for that clarity. Yes, when we budget for that equipment depreciation, what I meant by 10 years is that we do tend to budget that for maybe 10 years, but as it depreciates over that 5-year cycle, once it fully depreciates, we will take it off the books as well.
Well, then that does bring me back to the question. Are you saying that essentially this budget includes depreciation on a 10-year basis when in fact we're going to wear them out over a 5-year basis?
No, I think I would double check that and I will email you regards to what we used on the methodology.
Yeah.
If it was 5 years, we would have kept it at 5 years.
Okay. I just was trying to reconcile my own mind. What's the cash budget? Because the depreciation obviously isn't something that we're going to pay out of property taxes or out of revenues this year. So
No.
if we were trying to match revenues and expenses here, the $8 million is more than we're actually going to have to fund, isn't it?
Yes.
And do you know that the total amount of this depreciation and or other non-cash expenditures?
I do not know, but then I do know that the budget for next year for the equipment depreciation for the first year for those 6 vehicles and the 2 motorcycles, $112,000.
Okay, so the budget, the actual cash budget's around 8 million instead of around 8.1.
Yes. So
Yeah.
if you were to
Thank
take
you.
out the 100,000, that would be $8 million
Yeah.
actual cash. Yes.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Moving on to the fire department. And if you have questions, please feel free to jump in. The total budget for fire department is $6.1 million for next year. And the personnel budget is $5.3 million. That comprises of 21 FTEs. And also their service and supplies budget is $800,000. For the most part, fire department's budget is what we call status quo budget, meaning it's just a carryover from current fiscal year. There are certain increases due to contractual agreements, CPI increases to fees and utilities and whatnot. But for the most part, their budget is staying relatively similar to this fiscal year. They do have challenges. They've been having challenges of regards to recruitment. And if you have questions regards to that, Chief Rueda would be able to answer additional questions. But as recruitment's been an issue, and being that there's vacancies in the position, the department would have to backfill with overtime. And so they have been utilizing quite a bit of overtime and exceeding their overtime budget due to these vacancies. So I don't have any questions on fire. I'll move on to the last department, Parks and Public Works Department. Their budget for next year is $3.7 million. The personnel budget is $2 million. They have 16.5 FTEs, and their service and supplies is $1.7 million. And for the most part, their budget overall as a department is actually decreasing from the current fiscal year. And the reason for that decrease this year is mainly driven by the department actually shifting the construction management and inspection services from the general fund to the capital fund. And so then because of that frees up the general fund for next year. For the most part, beyond that, it's really a status quo budget. And then there's also a one-time budget that the council did approve back in October for the PD renovation project. And that was for $11,000. That was only for this current fiscal year. That won't be rolling over to next fiscal year. So that, of course, won't be budgeted next year. And with that said, that covers holistically at a very high level the 3 departments. I just wanted to touch on some of the important dates that are coming up. And I know a question was brought up regards to when are the budget study sessions. So the first budget study session will be on April 30th, which would be the next Friday that's coming up, not tomorrow, but the following Friday. And during that first budget study session meeting, all the departments except for community services, which includes recreation and library, will be presented to the city council. And then on the second budget study session, which will be on May 7th, will be the recreation library budget. And also we'll have a follow-up for any kind of outstanding pending items for CIP during that meeting as well. And then lastly, on May 28th, the proposed budget will be presented to the City Council for their adoption for next year. And then I'm hoping on May 29th, I will take a little bit of vacation time after packaging the whole budget together. But with that said, that concludes my presentation. And staff is here to answer any additional questions that you might have regards to the budget packet.
Okay, thank you, Director I'm sorry, Director Chung. Do we want to just briefly go over the package and see if anyone has any questions as we just scroll through it? Do we want to proceed that way? Is that sound like a plan?
Sure.
Okay, so going on to page 4 in the Acrobat file. This is from Chief Rueda.
Is somebody going to share that screen so we can see it? I didn't
Can
print every
Jennifer-
page out. I don't know about the others.
Jennifer, can you share that agenda package? Or actually, yeah,
Just a moment while I pull it up.
thank you.
Chair Shang, would you entertain a few questions while we're waiting?
sure,
If
please,
if
go ahead.
people have general
go
questions,
ahead.
I don't know if Victoria or Eugene do or anything. I've got a couple.
Sure, go ahead.
Uh,
Al.
Michael, what's the status of the hiring of your Parks and Public Works manager? I've forgotten where we are on that. I apologize.
Well, no need to apologize, Commissioner Bogue. We did run through recruitment in the first part of this year. We did have a #1 candidate. Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach an accord with them. And so we have re-advertised the position. We had 4 folks interviewed by an outside panel just on today's Thursday, yesterday. And then the city manager and I will be interviewing the top candidates in the next week or so. And hopefully from there, we will be able to announce an appointment.
Yeah, it
Very
appears you have the salary in the budget for the full year. So is that correct?
Yes, we do.
And that salary would be where, in administration?
The salary, I believe, is split between streets, grounds, parks, and
So
possibly fleet.
It's sprinkled throughout.
It's
huh?
sprinkled throughout. Yes.
Mm. So you're the entire personnel budget then in admin.
Myself and my analyst is the entire. We're the entire budget there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you're making progress because obviously you need that support function.
Yes, to have a daily field commander will be very helpful to us.
Okay, I see the agenda's up on the screen. Thank you, Jennifer. So Chief Rueda, you want to just go through?
So let me provide some flesh, so to speak, around the areas of interest the challenges that Paul spoke of. The first being recruitment. Um, Basically, each fire department in the county and probably in the state is pursuing candidates at this point, and it's been that way for about 3 years. Just with retirees leaving, fire departments have been hungry for applicants. For our department to offset sending people to paramedic school and fire academies on the city's payroll, we set our hiring standards at having a firefighter certification and having a paramedic certification. So that starts to narrow the pool of candidates that actually qualify, that possess minimum qualifications to apply. But we have been getting applicants, but getting those applicants from the application stage to actually working on the floor has really been a challenge. This year, our recruitment budget, like past years, is $16,600, and that includes our recruitment, the information we send out, the development of flyers, the equipment that we purchase for incoming firefighters. So just this year, we had 9 applicants who we started in our background process. Of those 9 applicants, 2 of those are actually working here. The others either went through the entire background application, were prepared to be medical, psychological exam, were prepared to be hired, and accepted employment with other fire jurisdictions. So 2 of 9 actually work here. The other 7, one of those was terminated on probation. The other 6 left, and the result is our expected budget this year. Remember, the $16,600 is what we're budgeted for, but we are expected to spend about $40,000 on recruitment, just because we're churning candidates, we're purchasing equipment, we're getting people prepared to work here in our city, and then they're declining employment basically at the last minute. It has been a real challenge, but we do have 2 candidates we're looking at now, and we have 2 vacancies. So we're hopeful that the 2 candidates we have that we're working through backgrounds, medical, psychological exam, that we'll actually be able to start them to work. That is the end of report on recruitment. And just, and I know I've said this before, nearly every one of those, if not all candidates, really declined because of not salary, but benefits. Our benefits just don't compete in this marketplace today. But our salary is comparable, but we are still getting applicants. So we'll continue to process those. Any questions on recruitment?
Yeah,
Chief
Chief,
Rueda,
oh, go ahead.
after you, Chairman.
Okay, yes, while we're on recruitment, I noticed in the budget, you have proposed for next year 16,600. So after what you said, do you think we need to increase that closer to what maybe we actually spent, or?
Paul and I discussed that, and I actually shared with him, I'm hoping that this year was an anomaly. And if we fill the 2 positions that we have, I think we're anticipating 1 retirement in either the next fiscal year or the following. So I'm thinking this year is more of an anomaly. I'm hoping this churning wouldn't occur another year or two, because it really does take a toll on the administrative staff, HR, and the firefighters training people. But that's the reason there was no request for an increase. I think we'll have to evaluate it as next year goes by. And if there is a continuance of this pattern, it would certainly, we'd come back and ask for more money the following year.
Okay, I have another question. You said benefits, we're not competing in benefits. Is that what, pension benefits, or you said it wasn't salary? What other benefits are we talking about?
Primarily, it's pension when,
Okay.
when, you know, young people are starting their careers. If they have options, they'll choose a place where they don't have to work for the lowest pension tier and the highest age. So that really has been the concern of several of the applicants that actually declined.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw this out there. If we were to be more competitive in that aspect of benefits, is that, where will we start that conversation?
I don't think CalPERS allows, I'm not an expert, but I do not think CalPERS actually allows us to change our pension plans for employees. So it would have to be some other, you know, innovative approach to trying to make us more competitive. But again, the one thing and this is a concern long-term, keeping employees here long enough. The one thing I didn't share with you was we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 employees this year that left, this past year, that left to go to other fire departments. And that's what I talked about, the churning that we experienced with new employees. I don't know that that's a discussion for here, but it is a long-term concern of mine about being competitive. And I think, I don't want to speak for Chief Incontro, but I think we've both seen some of this.
Okay. Victoria, did you have a question?
Yes, and thank you. You answered a couple of my questions with yours, Chairman. But Chief Rueda, would you say that if CalPERS has limitations, but we are losing staff as well as having a lower pull-through rate of recruits, would you say that that's a reflection of other stations being creative, like you said, with that all-in comp plan?
I think when the CalPERS, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do believe when cities were required to sort of state what their future CalPERS plans were, other cities took different options than San Marino did. Which our option right now for a new employee is 2% per year. And then you actually max out at, I think you max out at 57. So that is the lowest tier in CalPERS that's allowed. I mean, on the one end, it's very fiscally responsible, but on the other end, it does make it difficult to compete. The last candidate that declined employment here actually went to Sierra Madre, who has a 2.5% at 57. So when the market is on the employer's side, this doesn't seem to matter. When the market is on the candidate side and they can pick and choose, they start to look a little closer. And the people that we have had leave did so reluctantly. They love working here. They love the city. They love the cohesion that we have here in the fire department. And I know all of them struggled with whether to leave or not, but ultimately made decisions to leave for other fire departments.
Thank you for answering my question. That was my next one on where they may have gone. My last question would be, when we look at the process flow of the recruitment process, do you feel that if we shared the all-in comp package earlier on in the process, we might be able to give people a better feel of, what the big picture is, and we might not spend as much money, ushering them through the entire process? And I might be wrongly assuming that we tell them about compensation at the very end, but I just didn't know if there was a way that we might be able to screen earlier.
Yeah, they get the entire compensation package and information about the department up front. But these are candidates that are because we have hiring standards that require nearly all of the training to be completed before they come here. These candidates are a highly sought after commodity. And when they've made, with the application processes that exist today, they can make multiple applications at a single time, distribute those. So they're being sought by multiple fire departments, and they're sort of managing where they're going to go and who's going to make the offer first. And sometimes, even when we've made offers, we've had people turn us down just prior to starting.
Understand it's complex. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Paul? As I read the material in all three departments, it appears that our pension cost is increasing, or budgeted to increase about 10.5% this year. I assume that is a reflection largely, or that's basically basically related to estimates from CalPERS.
Yes. Yes.
And so even though we're in the lowest tier, we're still experiencing a 10.5% increase in our total pension cost for each of the departments.
Yes, we are at the mercy of CalPERS, for better for worse, and they provide these rates for us for budgeting purposes, and it's unfortunate, but yes, CalPERS is that double-edged sword where it's a benefit per se for an employee, but also it's a fiscal burden, depending upon what program you're on. But yes, it is provided by CalPERS for next year.
So
Commissioner Bogue, if I can just interrupt for just 1 second. I think also Paul made a slight comment, but to clarify your question, we have all employees who were hired after 2013 became part of PEPRA, and PEPRA, such as myself, PEPRA has a limit of the 2% at 57, while those that were hired prior to that date are part of CalPERS, which is, and if they were hired under the, trying to remember the terminology, but the regular pension system, it was 3%. And it was a different year. I believe it was 53% at 50. So the cost of pensions, that 10%, is made up of employees with both 2% and 3%.
Paul, is PEPRA, is the funds that are being paid in now, and obviously invested. Are they are those funds also managed by the CalPERS people, or is there a separate fund manager there?
No, that's all managed by the CalPERS
Yeah.
investment team there.
Yeah. And they're the folks that have had a little problem achieving their goals.
Yes, they did. They ended the last fiscal year, they were supposed to shoot for 7%. They were only able to achieve 4%. And
Yeah. And the year before, I think they lost money.
I
Or one of the years back.
I know they lost their head of the investment officer too, regards to issues. And so, they've been having some issues there regards to investment.
And we are not, and at this point, would we be able to, as a result of negotiations with our employees or with CalPERS or Pepper or whoever, to choose a different plan, or are we basically locked in place? And I'm not suggesting we run out and do anything. I'm just asking a background question.
Let me take a shot at that. So to my understanding, and I'm not a CalPERS expert on the fiscal side, yes, but I'm not sure about the agreement side, but I believe that we are obligated and agreed upon to keep at this rate. Regards to a better rate, I'm pretty sure if CalPERS says that if you're going to pay more money for a better benefit, they would probably want to have a different agreement, but I would have to look into those terms and what it entails regards to that process.
Yeah, Commissioner Bogue, my understanding is that cities are locked into their original declaration of benefits.
Which comes back to your observation that we might have to become more creative if we want to overcome this perceived disadvantage. Then.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you all.
The second area of interest I asked Paul to share with you was the overtime discussion. We are budgeted each year $469,000 for overtime, and that is for basically to cover and make sure we have staffing here in the fire department for vacations, holidays, sick, and other compensated time off. This year, again, was an anomaly. Our projected overtime, according to the budget, will be closer to $900,000, nearly double the budget allocation. But there's reasons. Paul calculated in the offset that is shown in the budget that comes from not paying employee salaries from the vacant positions. So on the one hand, we're paying firefighters to work to staff the fire engine and the ambulance, but on the other hand, we weren't paying employees because we didn't have them here. So there was an offset. So the actual amount of overtime monies that we spent this year was closer to 161,000 over budget. And that's primarily the result of two firefighters here that we had with injuries that required surgery, and they were off long-term. And the other was two of our firefighters that contracted COVID and were actually off for a period of time. The actual number over our budgeted amount was closer to 161,000 when you offset the position coverage. So I hope that makes sense, but I'm available for questions if you have them.
May I ask a question? And it may not be to you, it might be to Paul. the 469 number, which is substantially less than our actual experience in prior years, and I assume that this netting issue isn't reflected in the prior year's actuals either. Is that right? So your actuals for 19 and 20 and for 21 all show the overtime number as the actual overtime paid, and the full-time salary amounts would have been net of any salaries not paid that were covered by overtime?
Yes, so
Okay.
the prior years are all actuals that actually hit the budget line item, yes.
Okay. And I can recall from other budget meetings over the most recent years, a concern on the part of citizens in the community for overtime costs. And and I guess my question I'm leading up to is, does the budgeting with a net overtime figure, well, I can see where there could be motivation to do that, but does it make any sense to do the accounting, the actual presentations on the same basis, so that it doesn't look like we're under budgeting?
I think overtime gets tricky.
Yeah,
there-
it does.
because there could be various overtime, especially in the public safety side of overtime. We can dive deep into various line items over time, but I think at the end of the day, the way I would want to present it is, let's wrap it all up into just one overtime, being that if there are certain savings, let's say, for instance, on your salary side, if you look at holistically as a net on your personnel budget, you will eventually see that as an offset, meaning if you're exceeding your overtime budget, you should see that savings elsewhere in your salaries. So I am against actually breaking that out into additional overtime detail. We do there's a strike team overtime, and there are times when we break that up into certain details so that we can track certain reimbursements that are related to overtime.
Yeah.
But going into additional detail will be difficult to track as well on the timesheet side.
Commissioner, one of the reasons I asked Paul to put this on here is he and I watched this number quite carefully. I think I would say truthfully that both Paul and I are, and the rest of us are stewards really of the public trust. And we watch particularly this account. But sometimes we are at the mercy of injuries and other things that occur.
Sure.
But it is something we watch and we pay attention to, and we want to make sure we have adequate staffing here in the event of an emergency.
Yeah. It just strikes me as awkward, and I guess the public, when they look at this, they're looking at the budget rather than the actual. And the way we budget is fine. I guess it's the way we report actual that was really driving my question. Because if there's savings in the full-time salaries, and those savings are not reflected against the actual overtime, I guess there really isn't any other way to do it, is there? Because you can't credit overtime for the full-time equivalent of the replacement. So
Not really, no.
yeah. So okay. Well, I apologize for wasting everybody's time.
That's end of fire department areas of interest, Chair.
Thank you,
Unless
Chief.
you have other questions.
I think
I just have one little nit comment on page 3, page 6 of the Acrobat. You referenced the Huntington Library Art Collections and Botanical Gardens. I believe they changed the name of collections to museum So it's now Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens. You can just make that little correction. Any
Okay,
other? Okay, so is that take us through the fire department budget? Any other questions before we move on to police? Okay, Chief and Contro, go. You're on mute.
Director Chung, I think pretty much laid out what we have. Our biggest expenses for the year are going to be the increased cost for crossing guards, for the increased cost of Pasadena Humane. And the only increase where we're actually seeing something directly for the police department is our request for additional cameras, flock safety cameras. We've also been exploring the idea of where community members can get them, place them on their street, but all the data comes to us. That recently came up over last weekend and last week with the conversation we had with the Chinese Club. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
So Chief, we'll have a total of 30 flock cameras, including the 22 we have.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We have found since the implementation of the cameras approximately 9, maybe 10 months ago, that as we obtain hits on cameras, that we're missing locations. And we believe that 8 additional will help us have a better network of cameras. Also, we're looking at some software that will help us with those cameras. That would be separate from this budget. We have some funding available for that. The other 2 areas, one of them is the records information for the software. That is that would enable us to utilize a company called Laserfish, and not only will be able to take paper information and put it in a digital format, but we have a significant amount of discovery requests from courts, civil actions, and public records requests that will enable us to take the digital data, send it to the person requesting with safeguards and ensure that only the person requesting gets the data. That alone will save us personnel hours that are currently expended for doing those kind of things.
Chief and Contro, on the subject of cameras, do we use an app called Neighbors?
No, and I'm not familiar with that app either.
Okay, I just learned about this recently. Neighbors is, it's Neighbors by Ring. It's an app that takes different video from not just Ring, but from a lot of different companies. And I believe if, anyone can sign up for it, and if, the police department signs up for it, then we can have, it's coming up, a lot of different video sources that can be possibly utilized. Just kind of like having a big neighborhood watch with all the different inputs.
Well, like I said, I wasn't familiar with that name. We do use something similar through Ring, and people can sign up. And when we are requesting information of a crime that occurred in the area, we place the information with Ring. They're able to access any other cameras and get that data. One of the other things that we do is also go door to door following an event and do follow-ups if it's late at night. But we do use, I don't know if it's that app, but we do use an app or a process through Ring that provides us with that data.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know if it's the same one, but it sounds like Neighbors is a separate app that and Ring is just one part of it.
I'll find out and let you know at the next.
Yeah, if you can look into whether we can utilize that, that would be great.
To chime in, if what you're speaking about, Chairman, would allow people to opt in advance, say neighborhood folks said, sure, anytime you want to use, my footage that my camera captures, that might be able to give us better scale, Chief Incontro. We've actually been contacted in the past to use some of our footage, but I felt like it was a little bit clunky because you were at the mercy of someone being home, right? And making sure that you could reach them. And sometimes it would slow you down 2 to 3 days, depending on which neighbors would collaborate or, were around to give you that footage. So I just want to chime in just with some, I guess, real-time feedback. If what you're talking about, Chairman, would allow us to give you an opt-in going forward.
Well, it's not real time. I think that's what you have to understand. It's not real time. We still have to make a request. And if the people have authorized the release of footage to a law enforcement agency, then we obtain it. But if there isn't a real time way of looking at someone's home camera, in fact, that's a privacy issue that very few people want to allow law enforcement. And quite frankly, I really don't want to be gaining access to someone's private home cameras.
Fair enough.
Okay, anybody have any other questions for Chief Incontro on the police budget?
Chairman, I do have a question for the chief.
Yes, go ahead, Gene.
Hi, Chief. Are we having the same issues with recruitment and retention as the fire department is? I'm assuming you have the same PERS at 2% at 57, or is it different?
No, we share the same pain, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
The only additional issue, and maybe it is consistent, but in a different model, is not that many people want to become cops.
Not right now.
Less people want to become cops.
Yeah.
More want to be firefighters, but Chief Rueda has very high standards for his department, as do I. We have been fortunate this year. We did lose 4 officers, but I have one police recruit. She was a cadet, and she is hopefully graduating May 7th from the Sheriff's Academy. We have 2 police recruits that are in a pre-academy training program here at the station, a male and a female. They're both brand new. They both have to go through the academy. And we have a lateral candidate that is near the end of his process that will begin hopefully very soon, and he'll be out in the field going through the field training program. We are trying to focus on laterals. We're a unique department. When you look at larger departments that may have more options of different assignments that may have a different benefits package, not just, because we're not the only department in the state of California that has 2% at 57. Others do. Beverly Hills has 2% at 57, for example. The issues that we have are the types of policing we do. We have concierge kind of service. We have limited opportunities for advancement because people stay. Although we do have a period of time, those members that are between 2 and 5 years that are looking elsewhere from time to time. One of the things we're hoping with the fact that we only have 2 vacancies at this point, if we can get to our 28 personnel level, then we want to make opportunities for people to participate with the Pasadena Police Department as a tactical flight officer in their helicopter. We also are looking at a regional task force where we would place one of our officers on a regional task force that deals not with narcotics, because we don't have street level drug crime, and we look at something towards burglaries, vehicle thefts, things like that. And there's a couple of options for us. And with our new motorcycle program, which we're very fortunate to have, that's another area that would be helpful. If the schools decided that they wanted to partner in the cost of a school resource officer, then that could be another opportunity that we could give to our personnel.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, any other questions for Chief and Control, the police budget? Okay, thank you, Chief. Moving on to Parks and Public Works, Director Throne. Are you on mute? Director Throne, you're on mute.
There you go. All right.
There you go.
Thank you, Chair Chang. I wanted to highlight a couple of items that are in my proposed budget for next fiscal year. And they really reflect the changes in how we do some business, what we try to accomplish. There are 6 divisions within the Public Works Department, so we have a lot of moving parts here. And I appreciate the work with our finance director, because I have a lot of divisions that I keep track of, and I keep him on his toes for him to keep track of them as well. In administration, I'm shifting a large amount of funding that currently has been operating funds. I'm shifting it over to the capital program, and this is really for construction inspection, construction engineering. There was some funding provided to me in the last 2 years so that I would be able to have those financial resources available to me. However, also in the last 2 years, we've really gotten a good handle on our capital program and have a lot of programs. And so a lot of that work I can now roll into my programmatic activities, such as streets and signs and street lighting and those sorts of things. So I will be decreasing my administration budget by some amount. In my streets division, I'm doing a similar thing in my materials and supplies. I will be needing to buy less signs, primarily because as we get fully underway with our street rehabilitation program, we also are going to start including signage in that. So I won't be needing to really have a sign program that my maintenance folks will do. It'll actually be covered in the capital program. The other thing is, the commission may not know this, but there's actually a line item in my budget called Public Safety Commission. And that is a leftover, that's on that page right there. Thank you. That is a leftover from the old traffic commission days when, or the traffic safety committee, when there was a request to do something, it would be a little place for the traffic committee to add some signs or do some striping work. All that, all those activities are going to be shifted over to a new capital program called Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program. And so I no longer need to have that in the general fund. I can take it out of capital. So I'm eliminating that expense. One of the things that you'll see in both the parks and the grounds budget is more funding for irrigation. We have two things going on with irrigation. One is Cal American Water, as you know, is in the process of raising rates. We're a large customer of Cal American Water, and so we're always in the highest tier when it comes to water usage, so we pay the higher rate. We also maintain our landscaping at a much higher standard, and therefore it does require a lot more water. So we're anticipating an increase there of I think if you do the math, it's somewhere around 16%, and that's a combination of water rate increase and increased consumption that we have to pay for to keep our medians green, which is very much appreciated by the council and the community, and of course keep Lacey Park in tip-top shape. So that requires a lot of water. One other item is that in our grounds budget, we're anticipating that we're going to have a cost increase for our tree pruning contract. I'm working on getting that out to bid. The contract does expire this fiscal year, and I want to be prepared to have a new tree trimming contract. It'll be multi-year like the current one, and it will be better aligned with how we actually are doing pruning now versus how we were doing pruning about 5 or 6 years ago. And of course, the costs that we enjoyed 5 years ago, it's not the cost we're going to get now for tree pruning. We got a fairly fabulous deal back then, and I'm hoping to create enough competition that we'll get something similar, but I'm also expecting at least a 10% price increase on that. And then just in building maintenance, as the finance director indicated, other contract services in the building maintenance, that was a one-time expense for some renovation work to Chief and Contra's home away from home. And then because we will be doing major renovations to San Marino Center, I won't have to spend nearly as much money to repair it or service the equipment in it. So I've dropped that down to a bare minimum that hopefully will get us through that point when we start doing demolition and start replacing the interior of that building. Once we get about halfway through that project, we'll have a greater sense as to what the new operations and maintenance costs will be, and that will tailor into a future municipal budget. That really concludes that's the big picture items for Public Works. One of the things that I do every year with my budget is I really go back to the beginning and I talk to my folks and I say, okay, what haven't you done and what have you done that was or wasn't in your particular line item, and we refine it and then we check the costs. Most of the time when we have cost increases, it's not because we're necessarily doing additional work, it's the cost of doing that work becomes more expensive. Either the materials are more expensive or we have to hire some outside labor that gets more expensive. And fees are just driving us crazy right now. The state of California is continuously raising their fees. The fees for our fuel island and our stationary generator go up every year. And it becomes, a challenge for us to keep ahead of that. But we do require those things for operations, and so that's something that's factored into our operations budget. So that really completes the Public Works summary.
Thank you, Director Throne. Anybody have any questions, issues with the Parks and Public Works budget?
I have a question.
Yes. Go
Hi,
ahead,
Director
James.
Throne. It looks like we're going from 18 full-time FTEs to 16. Did we get rid of 2 employees, or are they just natural attrition?
Well, we're not reducing any employees. I currently have a vacancy for maintenance worker 3. I was not able to fill it last year because all of our recruitments were placed on hold due to the pandemic. So that position is currently being underfilled with a maintenance worker 1. So I have a position, I have that function being fulfilled, and actually it's a maintenance worker 3 in the fleet division, which is pretty important. So I underfilled it with a maintenance worker 1, but that left me basically a personnel hole elsewhere in my department. So I plan to fill that as soon as I get on board a public works manager, and that's the other vacancy that I currently have. So I'm not proposing any changes in that at all, just to properly fill the positions, one that's been vacant since December and one that I was not able to fill last year, as I mentioned, because of recruitment processes with the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Throne? Okay, so that brings us to the end of the package. Did we have anything that we want to suggest or modify in any of the 3 budgets as a result of our discussions here, or your reviews of the budget? I think we had a lot of questions answered tonight, and thank you, Chief Rueda, Chief Encontro, Director Throne. This has been, at least for me, it's been very helpful in understanding the budgets. Appreciate everyone calling in. Anyone other than the commissioners that's on this call have any comments? Notice there's a few members from the community and also our vice mayor's on. Anyone have any comments?
Very helpful presentation. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Hunter, are you open for one more question?
Yes, please go ahead, Al.
Yeah, really back to Paul. There was a mention that we might receive some money from the Biden Rescue Act. How does that fit into the budget? Does that, if it arrives, it simply would be recorded as revenue, or is it cost reimbursement? And would it affect this year or next?
So the $2.4 million that San Marino is due to receive is not reimbursement, it's actually a direct allocation. And it's going to be broken up into what they call 2 tranches or 2 payments. We're due to get half of the first half of that, 1.2 million, during this current fiscal year. And then the other remaining $1.2 million is expected to come in next fiscal year. The U.S. Treasury is still in the process of all the policies regards to how to utilize these funds. There is a high bullet point of how to use these funds, but as a finance person, we want to make sure, do you have to designate it into a separate fund? There are various questions of how are the expenses supposed to be tracked against this? So there's a lot of questions among the finance directors due to this funding source. All we do know is that it's a direct allocation for San Marino. And I did budget the first portion, the $1.2 million anticipated this fiscal year, but then also the 1.2 million is reflected on the revenue side for next fiscal year as well.
But we have not built any anticipated spending program monies or anything into these spending budgets,
We
right?
have not done that yet, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Chair Chang, if I can just say
Yes,
one
please,
last thing.
Chief. Yes.
Just a couple of things. I want to thank the commission for really taking the time and looking at our budget and giving us suggestions and helping us explain. This is good information for you in the community, but also for us as we prepare for the council meetings. And I really want to recognize Paul. He has done a phenomenal job, not only preparing us, putting the budget together, the work, his kind of, for me, a mentorship on government finance. I still struggle with it, but he's really done a lot to make this a professional city and a professional department within the finance world for us. So I just want to make sure we recognized him for the work that he's doing.
That's great.
If it wasn't so valuable, we would have recruited him over the fire.
He'd be a better
Go
cop.
on 3%.
Thank you, Paul.
No, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so let's see, as we are to provide direction on the budget for the three departments. As I see it, I don't think we have any recommendations to any of the numbers here. Do we have anything we want to recommend, or should we just proceed with the budget as is?
I suggest we proceed with the budget as is. I don't think, I didn't hear anything. Do we need to express some kind of an opinion? Is that what the council's looking for?
If I might, Chair Chang, I think that would be very handy for the two chiefs and I, if we could include that, or if Director Chung can include that in his staff report as to how the information was received and your support of it, or any modifications you might want to make. And then certainly you are invited to come to a week from Friday's budget meeting so that you could lend your actual voice to whatever sentiment that you send along through staff here to the council.
Yeah, the staff report regards to next week's budget study session has been drafted, but what I can do is during the presentation to the council, I can notify the council regards to what the commission potentially recommends, or any kind of comments that you want me to add to the presentation. I could do that.
Okay,
I would-
yeah, go ahead.
I would say that there's hopefully an understanding that further positioning for next year's budget with regard to retention and recruiting, maybe some strategy or competitive analysis to understand, like we talked about, how to get more competitive, because retention is a pretty big threat, right, to our community, but then also recruiting. And so hopefully that can be a bigger takeaway so that we're in a different position this time next year.
Okay.
That would be the only thing I have to add.
Okay, so can we note that in the minutes for this meeting? Take a note of that.
Chair, do you want us to vote on anything, or provide, or do you think you can just summarize all our thoughts as a a summary of consensus and share it that we're generally, yeah, that we're in support of the budget with the request that additional consideration be provided for to help us address the issue of competitiveness in and retention.
Sure. Perhaps you can make a motion and we'll second it. And
Well, Victoria had some good words there. Maybe she has the language you'd like to see us.
Are you humoring me, fellow chair? No, I think just with regard to positioning, right? For, yep, police and fire, potentially strategic analysis of where we sit amongst other cities, how we can get more creative with all-in compensation so that we can protect, you know, and retain our valued employees and help them want to not have to make these tough choices, right? On needing to depart from stations that they love, you know, but, and then also for recruitment. Sorry, that was wordy, but get the point. So for positioning for next year and ongoing.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we'd like to accept this budget as is for this year with a suggestion that we look at retention, recruitment, ideas for next year, and perhaps have something in the budget that would help us to that end, to retain and recruit police and fire personnel.
So are we encouraging the council to accept the budget as presented and to undertake a review of our compensation packages, specifically to address the question of competitiveness in the area of pensions?
We can request anything, I guess, to the council, where that's our
Well, I'm trying to figure out what we're going to vote on. I mean,
I think it sounds like a good summary.
I
Okay.
think we are requesting that we're saying that we believe that the budget as prepared and presented is representative of the needs of the departments, and that, however, that we would like the council to consider or study the issues that are affecting our employee retention, which are have to do primarily with the competitiveness of our pension plan.
Mhm.
I so
So
move.
Chair, I'll second that.
And Jennifer can figure out what we said and type something up nicely, right?
I'm trying, it's a lot.
Well, this is being recorded, right? So,
It's my fault. I'm a freshman. I'll work on it.
um,
So far, I think I'm going with move to accept the budget as presented and recommend to the council that an analysis be conducted in regards to employee retention and recruitment prior to next year's budget.
That's perfect.
There we go.
good
Love
summary.
it. Thank you.
Well done.
I second that.
Do we need a motion and a second?
Well, I moved and,
Okay, thank you,
I
Al.
second.
Gene seconded.
Dean seconded. I see a thumbs up from Sean Tro. Thank you, Sean. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Bye.
No opposed. Okay, motion passes. Well, okay, I guess that brings us to the end of this special session. once again, I'd like to thank everyone, especially Director Chung, putting this package together, and all the chiefs, Chief Encontro, Chief Rueda, and of course, Director Throne. Thank you all. And we will meet again during our regular meeting on May 3rd, I believe. May 3rd, 7 o'clock. So thank you all for calling in, and good evening.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.
Too.
Have a great evening.
Good night.